Okay, let's go. Does anybody want this pen? Because I have one. Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. Okay, here you go.
That is U.S. President Donald Trump at a signing ceremony for an executive order last Thursday at the White House. As you can see, there were men and women there wearing hard hats. Those are industrial workers who have been lobbying Donald Trump to bring in protectionist measures. And so he did. That executive order called for a Buy American scheme, whereby the U.S. government, through its contracts and finances, would favor American manufacturers over all foreigners, including Canadians. Let me quote just a little bit from the order. Infrastructure projects include public or private physical assets that are designed to provide or support services, including surface transportation, railways, bridges, transit, aviation, ports, including navigational channels, water resources, energy production, generation, storage, fossil fuels, just about anything you could possibly imagine, from broadband internet to pipelines and everything in between. Every single thing the U.S. government buys, it will now be biased against foreigners, biased towards Americans. This is a trade war. At least that's my view. But joining us now to give us his view is our old friend Manny Montenegrino, who is has a great experience in both legal matters and political matters. He used to be the lawyer for the Conservative Party, including for Stephen Harper, and he is a strategist in Ottawa. Manny, great to see you again. Welcome back. We really enjoyed your comments through the renegotiation of NAFTA. What do you think about this executive order? I think it's like a trade war. Am I overreacting?
You are yes and no. First of all, it's great that you've brought it up. I haven't seen it anywhere in the media. And it isn't necessarily a trade war. It's a continuation of what Donald Trump has been saying since 2015 campaigning. And that is basically make America great, get manufacturing, get steel back into America. And this is just one of the steps. And Ezra, when you look at I've looked at that executive order, and it deals with basically roughly infrastructure projects by the American government only. Now, when I say only, what does that mean? President Trump has been saying that he wants to build the infrastructure of America. He talks about the airports and the road structures and how superior they are in China, airports around the world. So that number could be huge. My estimate, it could be in the trillions of dollars over a long period of time. And that means it is a sizable amount that the world would want to bid on. And Canada, being the closest neighbor and probably the biggest supplier, certainly has to pay attention. Now, Ezra, that executive order does have a general position, Section 6. If you read it, it says, and I went to it because I'm saying, well, how could this make sense? How could you do a new USMCA deal and now sign this executive order? And I look at the executive order and it says, nothing in this order shall be construed to impair or otherwise affect sub-III existing rights and obligations under international agreements. So I felt good. I said, well, that's good. This order will not affect the a USMCA deal because it's exempted from this order. But Ezra, if you look at the deal that we signed, here's what the deal says. The new deal, and you might recall this, and hopefully your viewers do recall this, it was negotiated for a year and a half. Canada was kicked to the curb by both Mexico and the United States in the negotiations because they were being juvenile. They were asking for silly clauses dealing with gender. So they were out of the negotiations, and Mexico negotiated with United States alone, and they signed the deal. And then we, at the last minute, signed the deal, the Mexican deal. I'm not even going to call it the American deal, the Mexican negotiated deal. And if you look very carefully in that deal, it says that it exempts Mexico from government procurement. So basically, any procurement between governments of Mexico and governments of the United States are exempted. So that means you can bid, they can bid on them.
Okay,
But
so
Canada
can I just?
Yeah, sure.
I'm really glad you went back to the USMCA. That's the new name for the renegotiated NAFTA.
Right.
When you say that U.S. government procurement is exempted, does that mean
Yes.
it's exempted from having to follow free trade rules? So if the U.S. government is exempted in its own purchases, doesn't that mean that the USMCA allows Buy American?
But it only allows as between the agreement only allows us between Mexico and the USA. I didn't quite mean exempted. I'm saying exempted from the order.
Okay.
So basically, so maybe I'm going a little bit ahead of myself. But basically, what it's saying is that the new USMCA deals with government procurement, but only as it relates to Mexico and U.S., and Canada is not part of it. Canada signed the Mexican deal. So what that means, if you were giving advice to a manufacturer, that would mean try to find a subcontractor from Mexico to get in through the USMCA to get around the executive order.
So are you saying that Mexico has certain privileges that Canada doesn't?
Yes.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Mexico has a better deal than we do?
Yes.
Are you
and
serious?
if you look, yes, I mean, now, Ezra, this is as far as I got going through it because
It's very complicated. Very complicated.
Very complicated.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you, Ezra, no one has written on this.
Holy cow! I didn't know that, Manny, till you just said that.
Yeah. So what happens now is that Canada defaults into the World Trade Organization deal. That's where they will find their relief. So if they want to complain about U.S. action, and we'll say this executive order, they'll have to go under the WTO. They can't go under the USMCA. Mexico can go under the USMCA deal because it's a modern deal, it's a new deal, and it's the most current deal. So we are now forced as Canada, not having negotiated the deal and taking the Mexican deal, we now have to find legal relief from the WTO agreement, not from the new agreement, whereas Mexico can run to the new agreement and say, here's what we signed. This executive order shouldn't apply to us, and they'll probably win.
Huh. Manny, you know, I watched the press conference and then I read the transcript, and the White House really was like, they were being as noisy about this as they could because in their mind, this was Donald Trump keeping a promise to the American industrial heartland, which it was. He said the word China. I counted. He said it 28 times in his 38-minute press conference. He didn't say the word Canada once. And it makes sense because he's in this big negotiation with President Xi. And of course, he's been mad about China for decades, and he's mad about China because of Korea. So China's on his mind. I think we were collateral damage. I don't really think Trump dislikes Canada. He's got a couple of hotels here, I think. I don't think that Trump thinks about Justin Trudeau as much as the reverse is true. So I think we were an accidental casualty.
Well, I would
go ahead.
Yeah, I wouldn't put that way. Here's what Trump is a superior strategist. And I'm going to tell you something. He's the most transparent person you could negotiate with. He's been very clear what he wants. He just wants it. We're ignoring what he wants.
And what exactly does he want? What exactly does he want?
On this deal, well, he wants manufacturing back to the Rust Belt. He wants to make America great. He wants jobs. These are things. Now, Ezra, why is he doing this on January 31st, executive order? Two reasons, in my opinion. Number one, there is no deal with China. Therefore, they don't get the exemption under 6 III, i.e. there are no obligations or international agreements. So he's saying to China, I've just signed an executive order. You're out of America forever unless you sign the deal. If there's an international deal, this doesn't bite you. That's why China.
So it's actually it really is about China. Well, let me.
Yeah. Now hold on. Let me add one more thing.
Okay.
As you know, the USMCA has not received, it has not gone through Congress. This is also saying to the Democrats who control Congress, I've got a good deal with Canada. If you don't sign, they will be totally outside of it. So it's also a small message to Canada. And so he's a complete strategist. It's brilliant what he's doing. He's threatening China. And China, you're absolutely right. China is the main goal. If you don't sign a deal with us, you are out. And so this document does two things. It kind of tells the Democrats, wake up. It tells Canada, you're out. You got to go to the old WTO. And by the way, the steel industry is growing in America. And Ezra, let me add, as you know, there have been tariffs put on the Canadian steel. From what I've read, the U.S. that tariff equals $7.5 billion. So Canadian steel going into America is added with $7.5 billion. And I say steel, I mean aluminum as well, and all the other products. But $7.5 billion, that makes purchasers in America say, let's keep our steel industry going. We'll buy locally. And that's happened. Now, in Canada, we did a tit-for-tat trade, tit-for-tat tariffs, but it wasn't focused. It wasn't on anything. It was a revenue generator. We got it on whiskey. We got it on mustard and all things that really doesn't matter. So let me conclude by saying this. The tariff that Trump put on was specific to grow the industry in America, the steel industry, and it's very successful. Steel jobs are coming back. The tariffs in Canada was to give the government, the Liberal government, Justin Trudeau, $7.5 billion more to spend foolishly. Yeah. And that's why the tariffs both exist. That's why neither party is getting rid of the tariffs. Trump loves it because it forces manufacturing into America. Trudeau loves it because Canadians are paying $7.5 billion more in taxes, and he gets to spend it, which wasn't in his budget a year ago.
You know, it's interesting you say that. I think you're right. Trump is transparent. I think he really is a blue-collar-minded billionaire, even though that's like an oxymoron. I think he likes working people. He likes the trades. He likes photographs with guys with hard hats, whereas our guy talks about phasing out the oil sands. Our guy bans pipelines.
Right.
In fact, come to think of it, Trudeau really doesn't do a lot of photo ops with working class people. It's not cool enough for him. But let me ask you this, because I was reminded of when Barack Obama brought in Buy American, because it's a bipartisan thing.
Yes.
And Stephen Harper was tenacious, and I think you worked for Stephen Harper at the time. I don't know if you're at liberty to share us any of the behind the scenes, but from what I can tell on the outside, it looked like Stephen Harper said this is almost an economically existential threat to Canada, given our trade. So it was his top file. He was always down in Washington. He had his cabinet meet with Obama's cabinet. He got U.S. companies to agree to lobby for exemptions. And in fact, Obama, I showed a clip on Monday, Obama said, all right, enough. Like he was almost wearing down Obama, but not rudely. He wasn't rude. He hired a new Democrat as an ambassador, which I thought was brilliant, Gary Dewar, just to make Obama comfy. It would be like Trudeau hiring, a right-wing developer as an ambassador just to make Trump feel good. And that's part of it. And I guess what I'm asking, sorry for the long preamble, has Trudeau, in your detection, done anything to mitigate the damages to our economy the way Harper did 10 years ago?
Absolutely not. I can tell you, Stephen Harper is probably the most brilliant strategist that I know. He plays the long game and understands each and every element of it. That's why he was successful with Obama to stand down and give a Canadian exemption on the America-only clause that he put in 10 years ago. Barack Obama was more interested in kind of the optics of everything, whereas Harper understood the consequences. Now we reversed it. Now we have Trump, who understands clearly it's a plan. I have seen this from 2015. I mean, if only somebody was paying attention. Everything that Trump was done was signaled and easy, and he's on it. He's like the person building a business, and I see our prime minister like a guy filling in on the shift for one day, and that's his commitment. He gets the photo up, the shift. He was at work. Everybody's happy. And this guy, Trump, is grinding, and he is getting steel and manufacturing. If you saw the State of the Union address, he has manufacturing jobs are back in America. Steel jobs are back in America. That was an impossibility. Yeah. And how did it happen? He strategizes. And our prime minister doesn't. I mean, to think of it, Canada signed a trade agreement, our biggest trade agreement, USMCA, that Mexico negotiated completely with U.S. and we signed on the last minute. Yeah. That tells you everything.
Yeah. Manny, I want to ask you a question, and maybe I'm asking you to be a mind reader, but I mean, you have a lot of experience in Ottawa with the media, with politics, so you're the best guy to read minds if anyone can. The Canadian media really followed the NAFTA or the USMCA negotiations closely, partly because they really like Chrystia Freeland. And although she's not an experienced negotiator, she really was hands-on there. I think she was taken for a ride. I think Trump just really got everything he wanted and more. So the media, I mean, I remember the CBC went down there, they camped out outside. Like they were very dramatic about it. They covered every jot and tittle, as they say. Why hasn't there been any coverage? I haven't seen any coverage, let alone huge coverage, of what I think is a big setback for trade. I haven't seen it in our state broadcaster. I haven't seen it in the private sector media. I haven't even seen it really in the business pages. And I'm sort of thinking, Manny, am I crazy for thinking this is a big story, or are they crazy?
I think this is a big story. I think this is part of the bigger story. And the bigger story is that Trump has a plan and he's going to continue it. If he gets another 4 years and he continues with this plan, each one of his implementations is going to hurt Canada. And because he is going to make America great. And he has. So you're not wrong. I think the answer to your question is, and I'm telling you, it's pretty simple. Most people don't like really hard-working guys, and they like the peripheral of a person, because most people aren't. When I managed a big law firm, I knew who were the hard-working lawyers and who weren't. And so it's easier to be part of that whole group that does it. This is very difficult stuff to understand. I read through it all, and it's hard for me to understand. How do you dissect that as a media and put it to your viewers? It's better to talk about a T-shirt that the minister wore. It's better to talk about how the prime minister wears a certain garb and how and this is why we've gone to a country where the prime minister, with all the terrible things that are happening, detainees in China, trade wars with countries. We go to town halls because everyone understands the simplicity. I mean, what is the prime minister doing in town halls? Receiving questions and not answering questions, but everyone feels happy. This is hard stuff, Ezra, very important stuff, and it's going to cost Canadians a lot over the future. Prime Minister Harper understood it. He was there in the corners, and nobody understood what he did. Nobody understood the bullets that we met, that we dodged. So it's hard. And I think most of the media, to explain this, I mean, why do that when you could take a clip and show somebody, Chrystia Freeland at a grade school talking to grade school children? That's easier.
Yeah. I don't want to be obsessed with the journalistic aspect of that.
But here, let me add another point, Ezra. Another point is it makes Donald Trump look good. And
Trudeau and Freeland look like they didn't really have the great success that they said they did.
Right now, I can prove almost without a doubt that the narrative in Canada is, if you make Trump look terrible, by comparison, are really not so good, probably mostly inept prime minister looks good. That's the narrative. And when that's the narrative, you can't get off that narrative. You can't say Trump did spectacular things. You can't report on what he did, because then we say, hey, how come we don't have somebody as good as that? So there's two elements. Number one, it's complicated to talk about. It's complicated for people to understand. And people are now, it's easier to give them what I'll call, that type of media, the Inquirer type media that people are used to, but also it makes Trump look good. Trump is working his butt off to get America. I mean, the numbers coming out of America, it is amazing. I mean, I'll just give you some quick ones. You know, wages are up in America. Wages are down in Canada. Our GDP is 1 point some percent, and they keep changing it lower. Theirs is 3.5. I mean, America, America also has, there's a stat that people don't look at, and it's called the participation rate. How many people in your economy are working? America's is going up. Ours is going down. You know, we talk about our employment rate. It really means nothing. Our participation rate is going down. So on every measure, but we don't get to see this because it makes Trump look good.
Yeah.
And we don't want that.
Yeah. You know, permit me a 60-second personal anecdote.
Sorry.
I was at a party once and I met a Coptic Christian from Egypt who served in their army. And he was telling me what it was like in the Egyptian army. And he said that it wasn't until he came to Canada that he learned that Egypt and the other Arab countries lost the Six-Day War in 1967. It was one of the most lopsided military victories in history.
Yes.
But he said in Egypt, they were all taught it was a great victory for Egypt and so proud. And I just sort of laughed. I thought, oh my God, you lived in an alternative universe. And you just made me think that I think in Canada, our political media industrial complex wants, craves, needs the narrative that Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland totally won the trade war with Donald Trump and totally got a great deal in the USMCA. And I think that's why this news of this Buy American and the other things you're pointing out, they just like the Egyptian army. No. It was a great victory. It's like Baghdad Bob. We've got them on the run now.
Exactly.
And I think it's self-delusion, but for unemployed Canadians, it's not going to help them pay the bills. Last word to you, Manny.
Yeah, no, and the problem with it is everything that the media wants to look at has to be an immediate effect, therefore they can understand it. And so this will take years. If America does a 1 trillion, 2 trillion infrastructure over 10 years, these are jobs over 10 years that really doesn't affect this election cycle. What affects this election cycle is how can we make, I mean, there's no question that the Prime Minister is failing on almost every file. And so how do you save him? You got to keep the Trump is terrible narrative going, or he's got nothing. That's what it is.
Well, another great conversation, Manny. Thank you so much for doing that research. I am going to check the text of the USMCA because I was not aware of that session. Very interesting. Great to have you. Thanks for being so generous with your time.
No problem. Take care, Ezra.
All right, there you have it. Manny Montenegrino. He's the boss of Think Sharp Consultants in Ottawa, a former national partner at a national law firm, and used to be Stephen Harper's lawyer. That's an excerpt from the Ezra Levant show. Every day I do a video monologue and then I interview an interesting guest and then I end by reading my hate mail. But you've got to subscribe to it, which you can do at therebel.media/shows.